Hey, good evening, good evening, good evening. This is the day the Lord has made. We will rejoice and be glad in it. Another day's journey. So glad about it and so grateful for your joining in again for our conversation. For those of you that are getting used to this new format, we've been having this 5 o'clock conversation since the days of COVID. But what I did want to do is take it to another level, and there's no better way to take it to another level than have my sister Andrea Lawful Sanders here as well, and to have a conversation. We're having conversations with the community and about what's going on as we approach this most historic and important election. And so for the last few weeks, we've had different persons coming in to talk about the implications of what's going on in our community. We talked with the commissioners, both in Montgomery County and in Philadelphia County. Now we want to begin to talk to some people about what's going on the ground, also to keep you informed. This is still our time of prayer, and I'll be closing out in prayer and pointing towards what's going on in our church and this week coming up. But right now, I want to introduce you to Andrea Lawful Sanders. She's going to help us understand who we're talking to today and what we're talking about.
Welcome to The Truth with Alyn and Andrea. I am Andrea Lawful Sanders. This program is a part of Every Voice, Every Vote, a collaborative project with the Lenfest Institute for Journalism with lead support by the William Penn Foundation. Learn more at www.everyvoice-everyvote.org. Listen, this is a conversation today. Welcome. Good evening to all of you that I would love to have you all engaged in this process. We're talking to someone who is a millennial. Are you a millennial, Chelsea?
Yes, I am.
Chelsea is a millennial. And so I was excited. One of the conversations we wanted to have was with young people. And so here she is. Chelsea Cox is a Philadelphia native and is a leading figure in the field of data analytics and design with a bachelor's degree in actuarial science.
A bit of a nerd.
Actuarial science.
She's going to tell us what's about to happen.
And a minor in statistics from Penn State University, along with an MBA in finance from Temple University. She founded C2 Consulting Services in 2020. This consulting service embodies her vision to empower small businesses with data-driven insights. I wish I had known you 3 months ago, Chelsea. I was trying to find the data. I'm old, so it was a little bit of an issue for me. Chelsea's success in building her company from the ground up highlights her visionary leadership and business acumen. We're going to talk to Chelsea now, who is a dedicated advocate for community service and civic engagement, about the elections. How is it impacting her, the people in her age group, as she can specifically tell us, and what I told her before we started recording, the fuddy-duddies. The people who are 50 and older. Yes, I called us fuddy-duddies. I didn't say we were old. I said we were fuddy-duddies that, that have been voting forever and a day and trying to figure out, how we can engage young people more in the election process. Welcome to our conversation, my sister.
Thank you. Y'all look good for fuddy-duddies.
She said we look good for fuddy-duddies.
Y'all do.
Well, bless God.
Pastor Waller and I exercise. I know you exercise, right?
I got it in this morning.
Me too.
Y'all just
right.
look happy.
All
Though. Your
right.
skin is glowing. It's good.
The older we get, the better we have to work. We have to really work at
to
this.
hang on.
Yes.
That's right.
My goodness. It's not easy though, but we're working at it. So Chelsea, describe your life in Philadelphia as a young millennial and tell us what we would need to know, what you would want us to know about folks in your age group.
Sure. So my life in Philadelphia is very interesting. I started off being raised in West Philadelphia, Winfield specifically. Grew up in public school, had to travel at least an hour from my actual house to go to high school, which I went to Central, so big shout out to Central 266. And then my parents, Pamela and Curtis, encouraged all of us, I'm the youngest of four, encouraged us to go up to college. The requirement was you had to be a minimum of 2 hours away, so there was that. Decided to go up to Penn State just because they had the actuarial science program, and then I had three of my closest friends going to Penn State, so I didn't want to go by myself. So I went up there with them and came back and been working in insurance ever since. Now I don't live in Winfield. I actually live in a gentrified area, which I feel like I have to whisper that because I
Say
don't
more
look.
about that.
Yeah, I don't look like the typical gentrifyee. I am the gentrifier, I guess.
Yes.
Yeah. So we moved over into Brewery Town, which
Okay.
is 19121, in one of the newer construction builds, and we've been living over there for the last 4 to 5 years. Me and my husband, and we have a 4-year-old now, and it's great. It's nice because the neighborhood is still up and coming. We've built relationships with some of the individuals or the neighbors that have been there for a very long time, and we've built relationships with the newer neighbors, and it's been good. I can't say it was the best when we first moved over there. I don't think the neighbors were too happy to see us, but yes, it was.
Is it not
interesting.
Philadelphia?
It is Philadelphia.
Yeah.
It's Philadelphia.
So answer this for mother.
Yeah.
Why were they not happy to see you?
I think it's just an idea that an outsider is taking their neighborhood.
Okay, all right.
I think that's kind of
You're going to have to help me, Pastor Waller. Are you not Black living in Philadelphia?
last time.
So how did you become someone taking over a neighborhood when Philadelphia was filled with us?
Yeah. I can't really answer their specific how they were thinking, but we were met with not so happy faces. I think once we got to actually talk to the neighbors and show that we're here to stay and we are here to build camaraderie and community, I think they were more open and engaged. And now I love my neighbors. They watch me when I come in late and they make sure all my bags is taken care of and they ask if I need any help. They want to do block parties and they'll say, Chelsea, you want to come out? And I'll be like, sure, me and Hart want to come out and hang out with y'all. So it's been good. I just think it's a matter of people who this once used to be Grandma Phyllis's house. And now we can't even recognize what this house looks like because everything is white walled and now this new family has moved in and it's like, who are you guys? So I think that was like the challenge at the beginning.
You know, the beauty of Philadelphia is that it's a city of neighborhoods. But then because of that, every neighborhood has its own character. And then when the character begins to change, change always faces resistance.
So what are you saying
so-
to me, Pastor Waller, that in our neighborhoods are made up of different cultures and groups? Is that what you're saying?
Absolutely.
Okay.
And I think that's what makes Philadelphia beautiful.
Okay, got
But you also have to understand what that neighborhood is. You know, me not being from Philadelphia, I had to learn that. And I've been here 30 years, so I mean, I got my Philly card, so I'm in. But when, you know, if I called Germantown North Philly Heights, I was going to get in trouble.
Right.
And so, because there's Germantown, there's Mount Airy, there's
East
West
Oak
Oak
Lane.
Lane, there's East Oak Lane, there's Chestnut Hill. And while everything I just named has to share some stuff, it's its own thing. And even when things are changing, albeit for the better, change is still change.
Got it.
You know, and you know, when Jesus talked about change, he said, no one is going to like change when it first happens.
Yes.
And that's a whole conversation that we could have about what does that look like.
Right.
You know, our church, Enon West, right now is going through the gentrification thing. And we want to talk about how we demonstrate how a Black church can live in a gentrified area. And so that's one of the challenges, but that's not necessarily what we're here to talk about. But the real question I think that we both have for you, we've been talking for the last few weeks about voting. I'm 60 years old. I know why I vote. I know what's important to me, but how is that dissimilar or similar for you as you approach this upcoming election? What are the main themes for you? And we're asking you to speak kind of for younger people. What are you thinking about? What's most important and what's on the table for millennials in this conversation, this election?
Yeah, so I like to say that I'm in the sandwich generation. So I have a baby. I went through a process of having her during COVID, which was scary but beyond measure. It was at a time when I didn't even know if my husband was going to be able to come into the delivery room. that was terrifying. Getting education around my child, so the maternal health aspect, hiring doula services,
Yeah.
having the traditional Lamaze classes. I wasn't privy to have that just because of COVID, so I didn't have a lot of access to it. I did it virtually, so I did have a doula service virtually, and that was amazing, but it was still virtual, so that was super scary.
Yeah.
And then on the other half, I have a wonderful mother who is aging, but she needs help sometimes, and it's important for me and my sisters to be there, but then at the same time, I still feel like I want to be present for my family, but then also being present for her. So that is on the ballot or on the voting block for me. Being able to afford a life where I can take care of my child, take care of myself, and then also take care of my mother. Another thing on the voting block for me is, so I'm a business owner. I have C2 Consulting, which has been amazing and has grown substantially since I started, and access to capital. I am terrified about the new affirmative action laws. That is one of the biggest things that makes me nervous in terms of my further growth and trajectory within my particular sector.
Yeah.
I know the affirmative action laws just impacted education for now, but there's a possibility that it will trickle over into business. So over the last year and a half, I've been able to get certifications through the city, through the state, which are the minority business certifications and the disadvantaged business certifications, which I thought would be able to get my leg into the door of gaining contracts from a federal and state and city level. Now with the affirmative action laws coming in, I'm nervous that some of those contracts are not going to have that small percentage that gets designated towards the minority businesses. So that little teeny piece of the pie that we had, which was less than 10% of contracts were given to minority businesses from a sub and prime contractor standpoint, I'm afraid they're going to wipe that 10% away. So now that starts to raise a question like, well, where is my business? Now I have to re-strategize what my next 1 to 5 to 10 year overarching goal is for my business. So that is nerve-wracking. I'm nervous about just access to financial freedom. So a lot of the impacts that I'm feeling right now, and I spoke to you about it earlier, Pastor Weiler, is my daughter going to private school. So we live in an area where I wasn't too comfortable with the schools. And now we've decided to do a private school option, but me and my husband are not in the threshold where we qualify for a lot of the scholarships or financial aids from the schools, because it's like, oh no, you make too much. But we don't feel like we make too much. We feel like we just make enough to be able to sustain a comfortable life, but not enough to where we can pay $50,000 in tuition a year. So that's a struggle. We live in Philadelphia, so it's like we're being double taxed. I'm being taxed for a school system, but then I'm also being taxed when I'm sending my daughter to private school. So, I mean, I get that all things kind of compile into one, but these individual elections, not just the presidential elections, but the down ballot elections are a significant impact to where I'm at right now in my life.
How are your peers feeling in terms of what you just described? Is it the business part of it? Is it, taxes? Is it, are they having the same issues? By your own admission, you're living a semi-comfortable life, right? Are your peers experiencing the same thing? Are they having issues with rent, with food, or are they in the same places where you are right now?
So I'm really blessed to have an amazing network of women and just friends around me, both whether or not I work with them on a regular basis or whether or not they work at my job. So super blessed. Some of them have issues with student loan debt. I mean, I have issues with student loan debt. We all went to Penn State. Penn State wasn't super cheap. And I know some of my friends have multiple degrees from Penn State or multiple degrees from various colleges throughout. So that's a struggle for them. I have one great girlfriend who actually moved out of the city because she has 3 children that now she has to send to a different school district because she couldn't continue to live here in Philadelphia. A lot of my close friends do own a business. So some of them are into real estate or they're into, I have another friend that's into like editing information, like a writer. And they're feeling the brunt of not really being heard to a substantial point where we're in this pocket of individuals or people that we're not, some of our issues are not really necessarily being focused on, which is that access to capital and access to quality care in terms of child care and being taken care of from like a tax perspective. So we do have, like I have a wider range of friends, but majority of their gripes are making sure that their voices are heard and making sure it's heard in a substantial way.
You know, that's really interesting, because when we have this conversation about sort of the traditional Democrat Republican conversation, sometimes the traditional response to African American plight coming out of kind of both camps is they got a whole lot of conversation about police and a whole lot of conversation about justice reform. And here we are with a young lady that's saying, can we talk about the money?
Yes.
And can we talk about
The
access
sandwich
to
generation.
capital? Right.
Yes.
And that there's more going on in our community other than criminal justice reform. And I think that's important. And it also sounds like it would be interesting to have the conversation. You didn't say this, but you are, those of us who are a little older, I'm really afraid of voucher conversations and things of that nature, because I am concerned about where the funding for public education will go. But that does raise a question about someone in an old system that says some of my money is coming out, going over here. I'm putting out money to send my child to school, which is my choice. And those are all of the nuanced conversations that this generation wants to have. And I think both parties need to hear that this generation is saying, we need you to come up with some new answers. Also, making sure that both parties have an answer for what some people think was this great financial times in 2017, 18, and 19 that seemed to go away. But it was smoke and mirrors. And so I'm grateful that you talked about down ballot. Could you speak to us about when you're thinking down ballot, are there specific races and or specific parts of government that you feel impact your life more so than others?
Yeah. I think that this upcoming election is all about the policy and lawmakers. So they are the direct impact of how we live our day-to-day lives, as well as they can put in infrastructures in place to ensure some of those things that I'm concerned about, the access to quality care, paid family and medical leave for Pennsylvania, access to contracts from a city, state level. All of these elections directly impact my day-to-day. But more specifically, to answer your question, state reps, city council, senators, congressmen, all of these down ballot elections speak to or can draw out what we need to have a more inclusive and wholesome community. And by doing so, they can draft legislation and policies that are bipartisan, or nonpartisan, so to ensure that everybody is getting a piece of the pie and everyone is being brought to the table. So yeah, I'm super concerned about these down ballot races. And I think even though I've been seeing so much get out to vote for the presidents, those down ballot races are what ensures us as a community moving forward and making sure we have the majority in every single house, whether that is the state rep, the congressional, or the Senate house, is crucial for us to be heard.
You know what I love about this conversation? We make assumptions that our millennials are not engaged. You are super engaged. You understand exactly what's going on in this election cycle and what it means to you as a millennial along with your peers. Here's my question for you. There has been loads of conversation about your peer that, we're saying that your peers are not going out to vote and they're not, they're going to let this election slide on by and they don't feel like their voices are being heard. How important do you think this election is to your age group?
I think it is extremely important. I actually was doing some research on after the vice presidential debate yesterday when they were talking a lot about the taxes. I'm like, what are y'all talking about? Like, I know my taxes is high, but what federal taxes are y'all talking about? So just looking at the policy tax structure for each candidate and how some of them look good today, but for the next generation in 10, 20 years from now, the deficit would skyrocket. University of Penn did a study where they compared apples to apples the candidates that are on the ballot of like the economic impact of both of their policies, and it was vastly different. It was very almost terrifying that there is a thought that of creating a crafting a policy that would be better off for right now, but not thinking about
Long term.
when Harper becomes my age and now she's in 20,000 or 30,000 more debt because of what a vote that I didn't do on Tuesday the 5th. Yeah, so that was very terrifying. And then I also think that things like the paid family and medical leave, that could be passed right now. That is care for not only birthing mothers, birthing fathers. So it's important for them to bond with their children. It's important for someone like myself who's taking care or helping to take care of older individuals or younger individuals to be able to do that and not have to worry about job protection and job safety. I think a lot of my immediate peers understand the importance of this particular election, but the biggest question that I hear is, why does it matter? I think there needs to be more transparency in terms of what each office does, because that's the biggest thing I get. So like when people ask like, what's on this ballot, I say, oh, the lawmakers. So you don't like how something looks or you don't like how you weren't able to do X, Y, and Z. The person that you're voting for right now could change this. This lawmaker makes that law. This lawmaker makes that law. It's important that we push that out. I think it's really the why. It's the why are we voting and making sure everyone understands the what we are voting for. Yeah.
So it's clear to me that you know what's going on. I want to ask sort of an education question. Yeah. You shouted out Central. Yeah. And obviously Central is a great, what I found out about Philadelphia is if you're really from Philadelphia, the proof of where you're from is what high school did you go to.
Yes.
And so since I'm not from a Philadelphia high school, I can't. But Central is a great high school. What would you say helped you to have this type of commitment to this conversation? Did you learn it in school? Would you put it at the seat of you came up in a house that talked about it? Did you happen to grow up in a church where there was a wonderfully gifted pastor that talked about these things from the pulpit all of your life? Or did this sort of just come about as a result of your being in Penn State? When did the light turn on for you?
So I definitely think it was multifaceted, and Enon definitely played a major part in that.
And you fell prey to that little thing that he just said.
So my father, his name was Curtis Cephas,
Yes.
went to Wharton, graduated summa cum laude, was in the Black Panther Party, grew up in the Nation of Islam. Yeah. So he just was a dynamic person within himself. He used to read us the Wall Street Journal. Yeah. I remember just him talking about the importance of just education and knowledge. And he was gung-ho on economics. Like he was focus on how economic impact can better your life and yourself. And then I think just growing up within a space where family members were interested into politics and us being directly closely connected to other elected campaigns, it gave me the opportunity to just peek in like this and not like actually just dip my toe in. And I just am around conversations that are from multiple levels and multiple facets. So overarching and then just kind of like in the weeds too. Now, Central did teach us about economics and did teach us about like the importance of voting. I remember at the time, I don't feel like this is dating myself, but this was when the election where Nutter was running, and it was multiple mayors. I think all of the mayors came in to Central and were just talking about the importance of voting. So I thought that was like cool. I'm like, oh, look at y'all running the city. Y'all coming in to talk to us. And then like when I graduated and then went up to Penn State, you don't really hear too much about elections just because we're all the way up. At the time, I kind of shoot myself in the foot all the time that I should have been coming back to vote. I should have been coming back, or at least putting in mail-in ballots or something like that to kind of make sure my voice was heard. So it wasn't until I graduated, came back, and still had my father's like voice in my ear of like, Chelsea. And then of course, Enon coming back on Sundays.
You fell
and
for the
hearing you
banana
talk
in the tailpipe again.
Yes, I think it definitely was multifaceted. And then as I like to say, I kind of grew up and put on my big girl pants and start recognizing that my voice is as important as all other voices.
Wow.
And one of the biggest things I learned from my sister was what a super voter was. And I was just like, what is that? And she was like, well, how many times do you vote? I'm like, I vote often, when I remember it. And she's like, no, like targeted communication goes out to individuals who vote in all of the elections. And I think that's something really powerful that your generation does, my mom's generation does. Making sure you get out to the polls. Your name gets on lists for communication, and they listen. Politicians listen to the people that come out and want to have a say in the political process. I was like, let me raise my hand and make sure I get out to the polls and make sure that I'm on like one of those lists to become like a super voter.
She's teaching lessons. You're teaching lessons.
Absolutely.
You're teaching lessons that I don't think we could have used our own voices to get across. It had to come from you. The other thing I learned, and maybe you did too, Pastor, is that your family mattered. What was being said in your home from the time you were a little girl informed who she became, who you became as an adult. And so for those of you who are in the ether looking at us and watching us here, just know that your voices matter. Grandma, grandpa, what you choose to do. If you're saying, I'm not voting today because my vote doesn't matter, then that's what's going to happen to the generations following you. So it's important to continue to have that dialogue. And while we were doing all of this in the 50s and the 60s, when we first could vote, we've kind of lagged on it, right? And so it is important that we get back to that space by teaching our grandchildren. I talk to my grandchildren. I have books about Black children, Black women, right? And I read to them. They're 2 years old. What do they know? What they know? But you have to start from when they're small, right? And so kudos to your family for having this conversation with you and getting you there. And you were transparent in saying you didn't always get it right. You didn't know what a super voter was, but in having the conversations, you were there. Here's my question. What would you like the politicians to know in the city of Philadelphia about engaging your age group that would get them to come out and take voting more seriously?
I would love for them to know that it's okay to give room for the next generation. It's okay. It's okay to be innovative. It's okay to think outside of this normal everyday box. I think that is what is most important to me, because we're not going to meet you where you're at. You got to come down to where we are. And if you don't do that, you're inhibiting thousands of people from coming into that democratic process. I know specifically for millennials and Generation Z, we represent the largest population.
Voting bloc.
That's right.
Voting bloc in Philadelphia, but we vote the least.
Yes.
It is the older generation, so 65 plus, that vote the most, and they're getting heard. But what's going to happen when we become that block? Then we'll be looking back like, oh, we want you to do this. I was like, well, you didn't make an effort to get yourself out there at the time. So I think what I would want politicians to know is that it's okay to come down to where we're at. So one of the initiatives that I did, just because thinking through this process of like, how can we get more people like myself and just different demographics in Philadelphia to come out to vote, was I started a organization. It's called A Seat at the Table. And essentially what it does is it, in the form of a day party, so it's a little fun, encourages people to get out and recognize that the upcoming election is here. So it's normally on the Sunday before the actual election day. And it really just pushes people to understand what's important So we invite people to come. We show them resources of where they can go get their polling, where they can find their polling places, who's on the ballot, what elections are on the ballot, what each election means, who is actually running for those spots. And it's been going really well. Like, we've been getting a lot of positive feedback. We've reached over 2,000 people over the last 3 years. So it's been going positive. And I think it is a testament to being innovative. It's not a traditional handing out cards on the middle of the street. It's not a traditional town hall. It's more of a come have fun and then invite local elected officials to meet constituents and talk through real things that are going on in their communities and just having a good time.
And are they coming? Are the elected officials coming to your conversations?
They are. Maybe this is a shameless plug. They more can come.
So here's the thing about this. If they're not creating the seat for you, you created the seat for yourself, right?
That's right.
And brought them to you because your voting block matters. I want to thank you for joining us today and having this most important conversation.
Absolutely.
Do you have anything else you want to say to her, Pastor? Because, this was fantastic.
This was amazing. And I mean, you and your sister are just, you're amazing to me. And so I'm on Team Morgan and Team Chelsea, just period. And so thank you so much for being a part of this conversation. And I want to encourage those of you that are listening, recognize how important it is to engage a younger generation. Those of you that are listening, recognize how important it is for us to get the word out, that there's more to our conversation than just criminal justice reform, which is an important piece, but there's other conversations going on. And those of you that are political officials can hear that there's a generation that's saying, hey, bring some more conversation to the table. I do want to remind all of you all that we're excited because now we're getting ready to go into 8 days of glory, and I'm excited about what's going to be happening all week long. We're going to be bringing our food, bringing cans and bringing other non-perishable food items so that we can be a blessing to others for the upcoming Thanksgiving experience. So listen, Andrea, thank you so much for helping me make this thing happen. Chelsea, thank you so much for representing. And thank all of you for taking time out. As always, we want to close out with a word of prayer and remind you, I'll see you in the morning and looking forward to our conversation. God, I bless you and thank you. Thank you for our future. Thank you for these young people who are holding up the banner, who are concerned about what's happening in our community, who are engaging and who bringing something to the table that is for the good of us all. I pray, oh God, for those that will be gathering this week during revival, for those that will be gathering for canvassing, those that will be gathering for engaging the community and serving this present age. Lord, help us to recognize how we can make a difference in the world, that in our lives you get glory and it be for our good. I'm praying now, God, for everyone who will stand to preach the gospel tomorrow, everyone that will go to whatever church they're going to, that it would be a life-changing experience. Now, as we get ready to go, I pray this in Jesus' name, and for his sake we do pray. Let us all say, amen, amen. God bless you. God keep you is my prayer.